Hi, how you doing? He's a good boy. Oh, you're sniffing the new thing. What's up, everyone? It's Goose. 2 videos ago, I had teased that I had gotten something new for the channel, and all of you already know what it is. It is quite possibly one of the most talked about pieces of gear during the last 2 years. And about a year ago, I had decided that eventually I'd wanted to own all of the modelers that I feel like were still relevant and kind of do a comparison of all of them. So we got stuff like the HX Stomp XL. We have the Boss GT1000. This is the core model. My FM9 set up down on the floor right now, but that's what I typically use. And now we have this. Oh, I got it upside down. This is a Quad Cortex. One of the big reasons why I had gotten this now versus before was because my workflow relies heavily on a desktop editor. I could just keep this unit on my desk, but that would require me to have another foot pedal. And I'm so used to just having my pedal board have my modeler on it that until they got their desktop editor figured out, which is supposedly coming out this month, I wasn't going to drop the money on it yet. But now that there was a release date on the horizon, I decided to just take the dive in and get one. And let's unbox it. All right, and here it is. And so today what I wanted to do as sort of just an introduction to this unit for this channel is I wanted to go over some of the presets on this. This is commonly considered to be the most user-friendly of all the modelers. So today we're going to go through some presets and then create a patch that's similar to the one on my FM9. All right, before I move forward, if you like content about guitar gear and digital guitar gear especially, feel free to hit the subscribe and like buttons. It really helps me out. Thank you. All right, so I have the Quad Cortex set up on my desk here. There's no desktop editor yet. So I had to just put a camera on this and you're just going to see me fiddle with that. We're going to go over some presets that I think are interesting just on first glance. So this is basically my first look at the unit. And let's go through. There are quite a few here. So yeah, the first thing I kind of wanted to start off with is this Friedman. Let's turn off the reverb. So on this patch right now, there is an overdrive, which is kind of tuned the way I usually have it. I usually have tone a little down. And then on the Friedman, there are a few switches here. So there's a fat switch on. I usually have that off. Let's take the bass down a little bit. I keep the mid and treble kind of around where it's at. The gain usually is a lot higher, so that's interesting. This has a lot more gain than I remember a Friedman does, and the saturation switch isn't even on. Let's turn on the presence a little bit, and then the gain I'm going to pull down to about 6.5. On my FM9 and also on my modded Friedman, I have a depth/resonance knob, and usually I use that to make up for the lack of bass that I usually prefer on the dial. On the fat switch here, it kind of does the same thing. All right, sounds pretty good. I wish I had that depth knob. I also forgot that all these switches are also like knobs, so I was kind of struggling to get exactly like however much gain I wanted, and I could just use these knobs to do that. I had completely forgotten. PV505 lead. I'm guessing that's a PV5150. All right, so the reverb seems to always be on in these presets, so I'm going to be turning that one off again. And also the low end, as per usual on a 5150, is pretty flubby. We're gonna add an overdrive, exotic overdrive. It's a lot tighter, but it's a little bit noisier. Let's see if I can bring down the gain a little bit on it. So on this, I think for the mic, I would actually pull it a little bit closer to center. Because the way that it sounded on this preset, it sounded like it was just not close enough to the cab. And now it sounds actually a little bit clearer. There's a lot of bass. I want to roll the bass down a little bit on this. And also the depth can come down a little bit too. I don't think I need that much bass. Also on a 5150, 5 on the gain dial is pretty high. It's interesting because I can run gain on the 5150 models in my HX Stomp, as well as on the real amp that I've tried before at like 3, and that's basically enough gain. So it is kind of interesting that it's kind of choking the gain a little. And I also made sure that the volume on the exotic was all the way up, so it acts as kind of like a clean boost. And it's still... It's still a little drier than I expect. Let's move on to another preset. What is the pink highlight? What? This doesn't do anything. All right, let's go for one more. Let's look for like a clean amp. It's really hard to tell which one's a clean amp because, oh, well, this one says intimate clean. What amp model is this using? All right, so we're using a Princeton, there's a matchless, so we're blending 2. All right, let's change the reverb up a little bit. I'm not really digging this ambient one. Hall. That one's pretty good. Mind Hall. Oh, there's another reverb block. So we have 3 reverb blocks here. So stacking this many reverbs, it sounds pretty good. My initial impressions though is that all these reverbs on their own don't sound so great, but if you know how to stack a reverb, it seems like you can do pretty nice sounding clean. Let's use that Soldano and make our own little preset. I like this Soldano a lot. We're gonna get rid of this. Okay, so is there a way for me to mass just remove blocks? Okay, so I have to just go to each block and just remove block from grid. We'll add some blocks back. I just want to kind of make my own little preset here. So usually I have my amp pretty close to the beginning. And then here, I'm going to add an overdrive and we're going to do the SD1. That's what I'm used to. On the cab block, I'm going to actually get a guitar cab with a V30. Brit V30 60B. That's perfect. That's exactly what I use. I'm going to actually just only use one cab for now, so we're going to turn off the other cab. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a second amp down. And for the second amp, we're going to use a super reverb if there is one. Super vibrato. That's perfect. I'm going to use another overdrive. I usually use something like a MXR micro boost. Let's do the Nobel, because that's a Noble. And then usually with the clean, I also run a compressor. So let's put a compressor in there. Here we're gonna add a reverb, and then we're gonna put a delay. I actually use 2 delays usually. Digital delay probably is fine. And then I use another delay in front of the reverb. And then this will go to the output. All right, I also added a gate to this chain right after the cab block. So I can get like a more percussive kind of staccato sound. All right, one of the last things I want to add actually is an EQ for my lead. So usually what I do is I do a kind of parametric, but for simplicity's sake for today, I'm just going to do a low and high cut. So for the low pass filter, I'm going to reduce that to about 2000-ish. And for the high pass filter, I'm going to push it all the way up to like 200. And then on this scene, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add a dotted delay. And I think I can do that with the digital delay here. All right, so with this preset, I have basically my lead tone. I have my rhythm tone. I have my clean tone. And I have my delay tone. And so if I was still streaming on Twitch, this would probably be usable for me. I could use this for a variety of songs that I usually play. And my experience with putting this together, I know I kind of cut the YouTube video a little bit so that you can get through all the blocks that I was adding to this preset here. It wasn't the easiest thing I've had to do. So, and this is why I'm kind of looking forward to the Quad Cortex like editor, is because with every other modeler I've used, the desktop editor is just a lot easier for me to navigate through. The touchscreen is responsive, but it's not like iPhone responsive, but it's not also like really bad. It's just, it's not quite as, like if you see how I did that there, like if I drag something, like you see how it takes a little bit of time before it actually starts to move. That's kind of the delay that you're dealing with here. Also, interestingly enough, I'm at an angle right now. And so, and this kind of is a thing for all touchscreens, but because I'm at an angle, I actually have to tap above a little where my finger is. Otherwise, if I, from my perspective, I tap here, I'm actually going to tap the one below that I wanted to tap. So that's just another thing. When you're in an amp and you have the grid here, basically all of the lit up lights here correspond to the different grid on the screen. And sometimes I look at gain and I look immediately down and I think it's going to be this one, but it's actually this one. That's just something I had to get used to too. Another thing I had to learn was that you have to hold the mute or bypass button and add it to a patch. Otherwise, none of these will apply only to the scene. It will apply to the entire preset. In all honesty, when you're talking about using this unit without a computer, you can get a scene to work pretty well, and you can get the preset to like be where you want it to be pretty quickly. I will say that going in and fine-tuning things is a little bit harder on this touchscreen. I'd much rather do it on like a desktop editor. But if you want your rig to live away from your computer, which some people do, this is pretty good. And definitely a lot easier to use than something like an FM9 on their screen on the modeler itself. I'm curious to see how the head rush feels compared to this, and also that new Fender Tone Master Pro that came out as well. Now seems like the whole crop of modelers are doing the touchscreen thing, so we have that to look forward to. Also, the neural DSP plugins are about to come onto this thing, so I'm glad I got this right ahead of that as well. I don't know when that's going to drop, but the Cortex control should be out sometime this month, and I will try to get on that video as soon as I can once that drops so that I can go over that, because I'm actually kind of excited for it. Right now, my favorite model is definitely that Solo, which is the Soldano. Some of the other models that I've tried, like the Friedman and the 5150, some of the knobs don't quite correspond correctly, but the overall feel of the tone is correct. All right, so that's the first look at the Quad Cortex. I will be doing a lot of shootouts with this with the other modelers as well. So let me know what you specifically would want to compare between the two. So if you want to compare specific amp models, if you want to compare how overdrives sound, like a real overdrive goes into these modelers and how these modelers handle actual overdrives, and external pedals in general. And yeah, if you want me to go over all that, let me know. And I think that's going to do it for me. So thanks for watching, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Later.